Welcome to my podcast titled Is Your Way in Your Way? And for my listeners and first time listeners, this is the podcast that my listeners are ready to move forward in their lives. They're ready to overcome these obstacles that's challenging them to not even get out of their way and do what they're called to do. So I'm talking about let's mitigate these self-imposed barriers, even those external barriers that's preventing you from moving forward in your life. I like to call it moving forward to living your best life. Now, we talk about topics related to business and personal development and self-improvement. And today, our topic is going to be how a choice can change your life. And we have a special guest today, and I'm going to read her bio, but I'm going to introduce you to her. Her name is Kim DeYoung, and it is my pleasure to introduce Kim, who is passionate about supporting others to raise their level of consciousness about the choices they make. She's a choice coach, entrepreneur, and an author of the book of choice. Author of the Book of Choice. Drawing on years of experience and research, Kim unveils a fresh approach to decision making that will transform your way of thinking. In her book, she shares her comprehensive guide and choice mapping process to equip readers with practical strategies to navigate life's complexities, empowering them to make choices that align with their values and aspirations. Kim's deepest desire and passion is supporting others to have meaningful conversations about their choices. So let's begin having one of those conversations. Welcome, Kim, to the Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. It's just a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Yeah, this is interesting. One of my first question to you is I want you to provide some examples of what I would call meaningful choices people make without even thinking about it. Like what are some of these things?
So many. The choice to move, this choice to start a new job, the choice to end a relationship, the choice to find your way back to someone in your life that has mattered to you, the choice to start a creative venture, the choice to write a book, the choice to go on an adventure. These are all things that have like a bubbling in your life, something that you want to do. They're often personal or professional or relationship oriented, but there's the gamut of them.
Yeah. It's kind of like a fire in your belly, so to speak. You have these things that you always wanted to do, but you just can't seem to do it. You kind of get stuck. And I think, when I think about choices, I think people make them without even thinking they made a choice. That's kind of what I think about. Now, what's interesting to me with your corporate career in the fashion industry, you had to make a choice. You're no longer in that industry. And you had a passion for it. You enjoy what you're doing, but it looks like you made a choice to move forward. Tell us about that.
Well, it's an interesting question that you're asking of me. So I began in the fashion industry, and I'll even just take it one step back of even how I got there. I made a choice in college to add art history to my major. My major was economics. And I remember my father saying, "What will you do with that?" And I said, "I'm going to be a creative businesswoman. That's what I'm going to do." And now I thought that meant I was going to work in the art field. I was going to work for somebody's. And I was on that path, and then some stuff happened. And I thought, well, what other field is good for a woman who wants to be in the creative and business? And it was fashion. We had a connection. I began as an assistant buyer at a department store, and so the path began. And I moved through that. But interestingly, 12-ish years later, I was doing quite well. I had risen through the ranks of many beautiful companies. I was pregnant with my first child. We bought a house in the suburbs of New York that needed 2 incomes, and I was let go. And so now this was a choice that was made for me, a bit reactive.
Wow.
Now, I did not choose to leave that job. I would not have necessarily chosen. I loved corporate, loved what I did.
Yeah.
But what I made the choice to not go back. I made the choice at that time to not go and get another retail job. At the time, I thought, by the time I find something, I'm going to be near the end of a pregnancy of child number 1.
Yeah.
And that just didn't feel right. And so the choice I made in that moment was to start an entrepreneurial venture, which has now been, the past 25 years. So it was an interesting maneuvering through different experiences that led me to make different choices around that.
Okay. Wow. Like, let me ask you this. Is this something you always wanted to do? Like, I find it fascinating that you a choice coach. I don't know any choice coaches. So I'm curious, and I'm certain my listeners are, where did the choice coach come from? Like, what triggered that? What triggered that for you to be a choice coach?
Well, and to answer the beginning of your question, no, I never had a vision for becoming a choice coach. When I was let go from that retail job, I designed and produced and sold a line of maternity clothing. And I was living in the New York City suburbs, and I was selling it to the women of the tri-state area coming to my home. But what was interesting, while I loved dressing them, I actually liked talking to them more about where they were in life. They wanted some balance of motherhood and life and all of that. Anyway, I knew at that moment, I thought, I don't want to dress them as much as I want to coach them. So 25 years ago, I found my way into the coaching space. And I've worked with different niches of people, different sorts of things over the years. But I think through and through, I am a coach. That is who I am. But about 10 years ago, I was doing some other things, and I was interviewed by somebody. And my answer to her question was, what happens when we make choices and take action? How does our life unfold? And it was that question that got me thinking, what does happen? And I went back to a particular choice I'd made, and I started exploring it visually, like I made this choice. Who did I meet? What opportunities, what experiences, etc. And I created a map out of it. And in showing this map to one friend, she said, I want you to do that for me. Wow. So I thought, I don't have a process, but I'm a girl who says yes. Yeah. So I said, okay, let's have a conversation about a choice you made. And we now have a 2-hour conversation about all the details. And I just let my intuition go. I let my curiosity go. We had a beautiful deep dive conversation. And then I took her information and I kind of organized it in my way, and I presented it back to her in this beautiful map. So she had a new perspective with which to look at her choice. And then the following year, I did that for 29 other people. Wow. So now I am just, honestly, it was probably the best year of my life, because I was in these very deeply connected conversations with a variety of people. Some were family members, some were friends, some were clients, some were people I met, serendipitously, like someone like you. I'd be like, I love you. Do you want to explore a choice? And of course you would say yes, because who wouldn't want to explore a choice? Yeah. And what was interesting was that at the end of the year, because I had all of these really rich and interesting conversations, I thought, my God, I've learned so much. Now it's time to figure out, how do I teach this in a way that would be valuable to others, to share all the stories that I had. And that was really the journey. And that has been about a decade long. So the book that I've written, which is called The Book of Choice, just came out. So this has been this really wonderful journey. And honestly, I would probably be the happiest person on the face of the earth if all I did was speak to people about their choices, whether they are, starting out in the world or retiring, whatever it is. Like we're all navigating different things depending on our stage in life. And I find it all fascinating. and I find all the issues around choice that people hold on to, whether it's the shame of bad choices, the fear of stepping into a choice, indecision, the uncertainty of doing something in the future, like it's all so interesting. And none of us are immune to it. Like every single one of us at every stage is making choices all the time.
Wow. Well, congratulations on your
Thank
book.
you.
I know how that feels.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Good for you. So let me ask you this when we talk about choices that we make. My listeners, there are a lot of them that are have these aspirations and dreams, and they just are having challenges moving forward. They know they have this thing like, I know maybe I should get out of this relationship, or I may need to change jobs, or perhaps I need to relocate. I need to move, like you had indicated. What pattern, I guess, that you use to help them to make their decision? Could you take us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yes. And the choices you're referring to, those are big choices. To walk away from a relationship, to move, to find a new job. Like these are not like quick down and dirty things. Right. You might choose to do it, but the steps involved take time. Ooh. So I think it's actually a combination of two things. Number one, it's getting your head in the game of like, why does this choice matter? If you've really looked at it critically, like why does making this choice to move, to leave this relationship, to start a new job, like why does it really matter? And you have your own, question and answer experience with yourself, and you go as deep as you would like to go.
Okay.
Then, and this is always going to happen. Now it's like, okay, what could get in my way? What are the fears, the limiting beliefs? What obstacles are going to get in my way of making this choice that I've just said matters? And you have to like really write it down and see it, because sometimes the fears that we think will hold us back, when we write them down, we're able to look at them a bit objectively and say, that's old. That's not really a big one. On a scale of 1 to 10, that's a 2. Versus some of them are a 10. Some of them are really like paralyzing fears. But to accept it, that's a key step. The next step, and this is kind of the opposite of the fear, it's like, what becomes possible if I step into that choice? Like what could happen in my life if I move, if I start a new relationship? Like how does my life open up? And, often that's a hard question sometimes for people to answer on their own. It's nice to have a trusted friend with you, because people can often see bigger for us than we can for ourselves. But what I find often happens is that, like, on the one hand, the fears are holding you in the past, like they're not letting you move into this thing that you want. But the possibility is like, oh, I see, I want it. And you're kind of caught in this interesting tug of war. And truly, if the possibility can win out over the fears, you'll move forth. And then the fourth part is really taking action. And it can be small actions. It can, what are the things that you can do? It could be reaching out to somebody. It could be, for example, one client wanted to move. She lived on the East Coast, wanted something different. Her first action was putting a post out on social media saying, I'm looking to move. Tell me about some interesting cities. I want to open myself up. She got that feedback. Then she thought, you know what? I'm going to invest in traveling to 3 cities to see. And then she began to put the list together of like, what do I need in a city? Like when I live there, like what's important to me? I want a gym, a co-working space, a good supermarket, a this or that. I need the water. I need the mountains, whatever it may be. But getting that clarity and then taking the steps. And this is the magic that I always say to people. It's like, when you start taking the steps and take them, you do your part. The universe shows up and other things start to happen. And we've all seen this happen in our life. You make the call and next thing you know, something random shows up in your life. You're like, where'd that come from? And it's because you started the movement and other things do come into your life. So there's a combination of like you doing your part, let the universe, God, spirit, however you think of it, let them do theirs while you're moving forth on this choice.
Yeah, but one of the things you said, your choices is your teacher. Talk about that a little bit. What is that?
That really relates to, think about you and your past choices. We've all made them, And I like to think like this, like if you were to look back, likely you will either look back at choices that you're not proud of, that you feel regret or shame, or you're looking back at choices and you're like, yeah, I did good. That was a good choice. I'm really proud of that. Look where that set me up. So I like to believe that no choice is a wrong choice. I mean, there's a lesson in every choice. So if we can find the lesson, that's where the choice is the teacher. I just had a conversation. This was quite poignant. I learned of a young high school student who was using AI, all of this new technology, and he plagiarized a paper. Now he's expelled from school. Clearly, the kid did not make a smart choice. Now, I began to think of this kid and I thought, now this is a kid who could easily take the shame of this bad choice and it could trail him for the rest of his life.
Yes.
And he could now be a 50-year-old who is feeling like a loser because of the bad 18-year-old choice that he made. And you could appreciate that. We all know that person.
Exactly.
Or if he has good support, mentorship, parents, people in his life, except, you know what, I made a really stupid choice. Like I need to own it, accept it, do whatever penitence I need on that choice. And then I need to move on and I need to shift. So that choice does not act like a big piece of luggage holding me into the past.
Right.
And that's really the key. You know, I watch so many young people. I have 3 children in their 20s and, you know, they'll say, is this the right choice? I'm like, there's no right choice. You're going to make the best choice you can make at the moment, and then you will learn from it. And then you will use that information to make your next choices.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's was going to be my other question about, you know, when we don't make the right choices, how we mull over it, we ruminate over it, you know, and I wanted my listeners to figure out, how do I get unstuck? You know, you were talking about, you know, talking to people about it. People that they trust. Go ahead.
It's such an important question because I think if there's anything that I have observed in this decade of talking to people about their choices, it is how much we get stuck. You know, we get in our own way for whatever reason, whether you are, you know, the ostrich who just sticks your head in the sand because you don't want to deal with it, or, you know, you go into this decision paralysis and you can't move forward. And I think to be able to have somebody trusted in your life that you can share with vulnerability, like what is going on for you, what is holding you back. And if you can really get to the bottom of it, look, I don't think anybody naturally procrastinates, but if you get to the bottom of like, okay, why are you procrastinating? What is getting in the way? What are you scared of? What is holding you back? Usually there's a kernel of something. And if you're willing to look at it and willing to address it with someone that you're comfortable, you know, sharing your dirty stuff with, you can kind of move forth with it.
Right, exactly. And I think too, what's key too, Kim, is they want to get over it. They want to overcome it. You have to want it bad enough if you want to get out of this vicious cycle. And, you know, and I was speaking the other day about being interviewed the other day, and I just said, you know, you get to a point where you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you have to get to that point if you want to make that transition. You know, and I think what you're doing and the work that you're doing is transformative. You know, if we can all kind of go through those steps, like you were saying first, like for my listeners, well, there are things that you want to do, you've been wanting to do it for so long. Why? You know, this is your pattern. You talked about, well, why? And then of course you figure that out. What's the big why? Why do I want to write a book? And that was my thing. That was what the name of my book, for those new listeners, is titled Is Your Way in Your Way? And I wrote that book, wanted to, because I know the majority of us are in our way, and it's preventing us from living the life that we're ordained to live. Because it enables us to have meaning in our lives. You know, you have a reason to wake up in our lives. You know, it's not such a mundane life. We're here to serve, not to be served. And it just sounds like with the work that you're doing, you're serving and making these individuals, having them to transition to transform their lives. And then, you know, I like the second part when you say, well, what's getting in your way? Like, what are the limiting beliefs that's preventing you from, like the young lady that wanted to move? What is it? I'm afraid. I don't know anybody. You have to kind of identify, as you indicated, what those are, and just to know that all things are possible, as you indicated, everything. I mean, just think, if you did it, you don't know who you meet, what'll come. Your life will turn around. Things will be different. It won't be the same because you've gotten out of that routine, so to speak. And then you said to take action, and taking action is just where the magic is. I love what you said. You have to activate, you have to do something. So I just love your choice mapping.
Thank
I
you.
really like that choice mapping thing. We talked about that. And now, Kim, do you, the clients that you have, how can people get in touch with you?
I would say the easiest way is through my website. If they go to kimdeyoung.com, and there are clear links to coaching and speaking. And if they want to, see more, I share a lot on Instagram. I enjoy Instagram a lot. And
Okay.
I'm very fortunate that because of the content that I talk about, like, I'm always having conversations. So, as I learn something, or as a thought comes, I share it on social. So hopefully that's of value to those who follow me, and they may get some nuggets or some insights from that.
Right. And I noticed this, I think this was on your website, how you had 5 questions before making any decision. Could you kind of tell them what they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just as I shared the questions with you just now,
Uh-huh.
to think about what I've done is I've created a free guide for people, which really
Yeah.
takes those questions and goes a bit more in depth with them. And they can get that if they go to choicequestions.com. That's
Right.
accessible. It's free. You can grab that. But that was a lot of fun for me to create, because I thought, if somebody's making a choice and they want on their own just to, sit in the quiet of their room and think through these questions, I wanted them to have the resources for that, so they could
Hmm.
do that.
Yeah, I really like that.
Thank you.
Did. You talked about your children. And a lot of my listeners have children, they have adult children. And how as a parent can you support your children in regards to the choices they make? Or should they, it's kind of interesting. You say, well, are they children? They're not, they will always be your children. You will always love them. Young adults or whatever, but you want the best for them. You always will. But what are some things as a parent, how can they support that? Because, another thing I noticed with young adult children, parents don't know anything. You can tell me anything, sure. But let a friend or someone else mention it, say something to them. You would have said the same thing, but for some reason, I don't know what that is, but for some reason, they will listen to them and receive that message from them rather than the parent. Right. So, what are some how else are some interesting ways how a parent can support their child? Young.
It's such an important question, and the truth is, I don't think there's one answer, but I think if we can give our children the belief in themselves that it is up to them to make their choices, and it is up to them to see the ramifications of their choices. And and should they make a choice and it not be the choice that they wanted, okay, that's information. You needed to see that, and then now you shift. And I think it is, there's not one way. I remember when my kids were applying to college, they didn't get into one, did get into one. I said, there's no one college for any of you. Like, the minute you land on the campus and you have a kid smile at you, you'll be fine. Like, you take your first good class, you meet your first friend, like, you're okay.
Right, exactly.
And, if I look back to, adding things to my major, I'm now watching my kids navigate this. My youngest son is a sophomore, and still figuring out his major and the bigness of that choice. And of course, at 20, that is the biggest choice he's got going on right now. And I was like, is this choice going to define your life? Like, choose the best major right now. Like, take some classes, you're not going to know if you like them until you take them. If you like them, keep going. If you don't, you might need to shift a little bit. Like, you're just doing the very best that you can. You think you want to try an activity. If something's calling to you, I mean, one of the things I really do believe in as adults that we can support our children to do is to tap into their own gut instinct. I think it's a very valuable tool. I think as we've aged, we know how to use it more, hopefully.
Yes.
And the more we can support our kids to ask that question, like, does this feel like a good choice? Does this feel right? Like, there's always going to be the tangible stuff to think about. But then there's just that, like, does it feel good in your belly? Like, does that, and, you know, they have to learn to judge that themselves. So just even opening that up as part of the process for them.
Yes.
And, you know, I think additionally, just as letting our kids know as parents, we're there to support, but we're not there to do it for them. Exactly. You know, we raise them. They're out of the nest. Like, we're there. We're always going to be there. Right. But they have to fly. They've got to figure it out. We had to figure it out. They've got to make the mistakes.
Exactly.
And the mistakes are okay. And, you know, maybe part of the role for us as parents is letting them really feel confident that should whatever they've done not like feel like a mistake, that we're not going to shame them, judge them, I told you so kind of language. You know, we're going to support them through it.
Exactly. As long as you let them know and you have that type of relationship with your children, that, hey, I think that's great answer. You know, it's like our title again is How a Choice Can Change Your Life. I kind of think about you know, even after writing the book, it has changed my life. And this is a book that's been in the making for 13, 14 years. And I wouldn't do it because of those self-imposed or limiting beliefs. You know, for yourself, you got laid off or downsized or whatever, you know, so what are you going to do about it? You can sulk, or you can get bitter. I mean, there are different choices you can make. And so I will ask you this question, like I've asked many of my guests, and I may know your answer, but I usually ask, and I want my listeners to think about this as well. From a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how would you rate yourself today in living your best life, Kim?
It's a lovely question. I would say I'm at an 8. I am really, and I made the choice to be there. I was not living my best life a year ago. I was doing work that was draining me. I was waking up every day with a pit in my stomach. I was doing things that, yes, they paid the bills, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I just said, I can't do this. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do work that has meaning. I want to do that. And so I would say, having completed this book, having ventured into all that I'm doing, I am very much on the path to living the life that I want to be living. Very, very much so.
That is so profound. And I hope my listeners listen to that. Kim said a year. Now look what happened I didn't ask her how she was, what her rating was last year. I just wanted to know what it is now. And that's why I asked my listeners to always think of that. Where are you now in your life? And I just think I am very curious about your book. And because of that, I want to get your book. I want to get your book, the book of choice, because I think, like I said, that entrepreneur is just so profound. So Kim, as we wrap up this podcast today, is there anything else you'd like for my listeners to hear from you that will enable them maybe to pivot, to do something, to just be sick and tired and also want to make a move?
You know what? I will share a message that has had great meaning to me, which is, I had a conversation 6 months ago with a dear friend, a woman who is now in her early 80s. And she had read the beginning of my book, and she came to me, she said, Kim, is it too late? And I said, is it too late for what? She said, I have not been making thoughtful choices in my life. I I just haven't. I haven't given it attention. I had a husband who made them. I didn't. I'm generationally at that age, whatever her reason was. I said, at any time, you can choose to be more intentional and thoughtful about your choices, no matter your age. And I hope that this book will be a tool to support everyone who reads. And then if it touches them, to share it with the younger generation so that we can let them know, wow, like what happens when you are really thoughtful and intentional about your choices? How does that change the way you live? I mean, the power of that is extraordinary.
Yes, that is just the impact. That's good. It's kind of like you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Yeah. So, right. Well, Kim, I could talk even more, but you know what? This conversation has been great for me, and I thank you for coming, and I thank my listeners. And for my listeners, you know that every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is your way in your way on. So I'd like to thank you again. God bless you, and bye for now.
Thank you.